Well, it's Christmas time again. Time for cheer and copious amounts of beverages and gifts. And my gift to you is this extra depressing episode of the worst true crime podcast on the internet, Evil Done Badly. Grab yourself a toque and bundle up with an eggnog and get uncomfortable. This episode is about all that the holiday season has to offer: shopping, family, and a whole bunch of old-timey murder. Let's get to it. Let's talk about the Lawson family murders from 1929. Cue the theme song. This episode is brought to you by the band The Dorks. That's Dorks, spelled with a Z, and their holiday song, Merry Christmas Motherfucker. It's currently available on all streaming networks for your listening pleasure.
Merry Christmas, motherfucker. Merry Christmas, motherfucker. Merry Christmas, motherfucker.
Catchy, ain't it? Now back to the show. It's December 1929, and North Carolina sharecropper Charles Davis, Charlie Lawson, has big plans for his big family this Christmas. Charlie and his wife Fanny have 7 children together and seem like your regular big-ass farm family with enough kids to help plow the fields before they are out of diapers. I'm no expert on sharecroppers, but it doesn't sound to me like they were particularly well off. Now, they did manage to save up enough money to eventually buy their own farm in 1927. So, they did alright. They managed to stay afloat somehow. What makes any of this noteworthy is that the people in the area found it a bit peculiar when he rustled up the whole flock of them, drove into town, outfitted all 8 of them with new clothes, and paid to have a family portrait professionally taken. This was not as easy or as cheap as it is today, and it came across as contradictory to the family's perceived wealth. While this was out of the ordinary for a family of limited means, it was no reason to assume disaster was about to strike. Also, it's no one's fucking business what they want to spend their money on or where they got it. So piss off. If it bothers you that much, go get your own picture taken. Anyways, here's where the story takes a bit of a fucked up twist. On Christmas morning, Charlie would take his 2 beagles and go hunting. Now, Charlie would claim that he ran out of ammunition. So he sent his oldest son, Arthur, to town to buy more. Nothing crazy there, but this point will be important later on. Later that morning, Carrie, age 12, and Mabel, age 7, were leaving the farm and on their way to visit their aunt and uncle's house. They wouldn't make it there, though, because their dad was tucked away behind the tobacco barn, waiting for them to pass by. Was he gonna jump out and shout boo? No! When the unsuspecting children came into range, Charlie popped out around the corner and fired at them with his 12 gauge. And not only did he shoot them with his 12 gauge, he bludgeoned them to death afterwards just to make sure that they wouldn't survive the bullet wounds. Old Charlie was not fucking around here. He did not want his children to go on living. He then proceeded to hide the bodies in the tobacco barn. Well, Charlie, I'm not so sure you're out of ammunition, are you there, guy? And when he returned home, his wife Fanny was peeling potatoes on the front porch. So, what does he do? He says, "Honey, I'm home. What's for supper? I hope it's not potatoes again." No. He shoots her dead with the ammunition that he doesn't have. And then he makes his way inside. Wow. His oldest daughter is just inside the house, and she screams. Yup, I would too. So Marie is there screaming, and he's there with supposedly no ammunition, and he shoots her dead as well. Holy cow. This guy is on one hell of a rampage. So, between the screaming and the gunshots, it creates quite the commotion. And this would understandably scare the crap out of the two remaining little boys left inside. The two littlest boys, James, who was only 4, and Raymond, who was only 2, would attempt to hide and take shelter from the raving lunatic that is their dad. But Charlie, the lunatic dad, would track them down and shoot them as well. What a cunt. This crazy fucker would then go to the crib and bludgeon Mary Lou, his 4-month-old baby girl, to death. What the fuck? So, after all the death and destruction, Charlie would then go into the woods, pace around a tree for a bit, and then rightfully kill himself. The howling of his beagles would lead the way to the place of his demise, so they had no trouble finding where Charlie went and took his own life. Now, oddly, the bodies of the family members would be all found with their arms crossed and either pillows or rocks under their heads. Why Charlie felt the need to display this small amount of dignity to the bodies of his dead family members after flat out annihilating them remains a mystery. All I can say about that is I hope old Charlie and his dead body did not get a fucking pillow. Now, Charlie's corpse had a suicide note in the pocket. It was addressed to his parents, and in it he took full responsibility for his actions. It seems unlikely that anyone else would have been blamed for his bloody rampage. But, you know, if you're writing a suicide note planning on killing your family, logic kind of goes out the window. Anyway, this is a fucking avoidable tragedy. There's 7 lives lost, and many questions left unanswered. What could drive Charlie to such depths of despair and utter malevolence? There are a few theories, a couple of which seem plausible, yet all are equally inconclusive. One theory posits that Charlie had become a changed man after suffering a traumatic head injury a few months earlier. He gave himself a bop on the head while digging a ditch. It happens. Depending on who you ask, Charlie had been acting erratically leading up to the event, and it all seems to make sense. So, he got bopped on the head, his brain got a little off kilter, and he gradually got worse until he exploded. Okay. Some people went so far to say as he was no longer the same good-natured old Charlie that he used to be after he bopped himself on the head. Now, I'm calling him old. I'm calling him old Charlie because he lived back in the 1920s. He was only 43 when this all went down. He's actually younger than I am now. Oh, for fuck's sakes. Get back to the story, old dick. Come on, here we go. Let's move along here. Contrary to this whack on the head and now he's a maniac opinion, though, is the autopsy, which showed no brain abnormality. Now, just let me clarify. I'm sure medical professionals in 1929 were very, very bright people, and they did their jobs to the best of their abilities. But I don't think they were quite as thorough and advanced as the brain scientists of today are. Maybe there were some quirks in Charlie's noggin that the 1929 medical professionals were not capable of detecting, qualified as they were. That's just what I'm saying. Knowing what we know now about brain damage, it seems genuinely likely that it may have played a part in old Charlie's lapse of sanity. But that's not all. A second theory approaches. According to the rumors and hearsay from friends of distant relatives and acquaintances, basically what I'm saying here is that it's a rumor, and a nasty fucking one at that could have come from anywhere, and is not to be taken as fact. Again, it depends on who you ask. What was I saying? Oh yeah. The theory is that he knocked up his oldest daughter, Marie. And I don't think people thought it was consensual. And Charlie went ahead and killed everyone out of crippling shame because it was about to come out. So as far as gossip goes, this is by far the juiciest theory out there. Though, according to the autopsy, there is no record of her being pregnant. So there's no real physical evidence of this, but it is a very widely circulated story about the case and is certainly within the realm of possibility. On the more mundane side of it, Charlie may have just gone broke. It was the beginning of the Great Depression after all. He could have just had an extreme reaction to his impending poverty. Now, I've been broke my whole life, but I've never considered killing anyone over it. I mean, there are plenty of good reasons to want to kill people, but being poor is not one of them. But to each his own. So it could be one of those theories, it could be none of those theories, or it could be some combination of the three. Being penniless, being smacked in the head, and being the father of your daughter's baby will make you go a little, if not a lot, bonkers. One not so widely circulated theory about Charlie's incident is that there's a slight chance there was a tenuous link to organized crime in there somewhere. It's been suggested that the mob had some reason to get rid of Charlie and took care of the whole family to make it look like Charlie went cuckoo and killed everyone. Now this theory seems a little far-fetched. I also have my own theory, and I consider it reasonably credible. I think the most likely event that led to Charlie going nuts was that he was out in his tobacco field by himself one evening, and he saw a bright light. The light was in the sky and got bigger and more intense, and try as he might, he could not look away. The blinding light engulfed him as he felt himself being spontaneously lifted towards an enormous circular object in the sky. And then the next thing old Charlie remembers is waking up in a pile of cow manure the next day with a pain, a burning pain, a tortuous, searing pain in his cornhole. As he got up and dusted himself off, he found a box of candy on the ground with a note stuck to it. The note read something like this: "Thanks for the great time last night, Charlie. See you in the next millennium." Signed, Xerxes from the planet Spankatron. And all the little eyes that were written down had hearts over them. So, baffled old sore Charlie went to the doctor that afternoon and found out he had been probed by Xerxes the alien, and he was now pregnant with Xerxes' child. Now, giving birth to an alien child through his butthole was not something Charlie was mentally or physically equipped to deal with, and that sent him right over the fucking edge. The only thing we can say for certain is that this was not a spur-of-the-moment decision by Charlie. He had this planned out at least for a while. Between him having a suicide note, him arranging the bodies, sending the oldest kid off for shells, and even the picture taking in new clothes, sure makes it look very, very premeditated. I think the most perplexing part about this whole thing is, why did Charlie send Arthur, the oldest son, to town to get ammunition while he carried out the murders? He clearly wanted him to live because he obviously had plenty of ammunition. He didn't need to send Arthur to town for shells, as evidenced by all the fatal shooting that Charlie did. Maybe he wanted to ensure his bloodline would be carried on? Apparently, that was a big deal to men back then, but I mean, if you're such a psycho crackpot, I mean, maybe you shouldn't want your bloodline to carry on, just saying, holy shit. Anyway, I don't think the whole bloodline carrying on is such a big deal these days. I mean, I love my kids and all, but I shudder to think about what kind of cesspool this stupid world is going to be by the time they grow up. If I was in the market for making babies nowadays, I'd seriously have to think about the kind of world I would be bringing them up in. This place is not going to get any better, and future generations are going to have to deal with it. Holy shit, what a pointless fucking tangent that was. Let's get on with the story. So yeah, it's possible, but what kind of life was Arthur supposed to lead after having his family massacred from within by crazy old fucking Charlie? I don't see how you're supposed to recover from something this terrible, and I don't think old Charlie was really doing Arthur much of a favor here. But if that is the case, Arthur did carry on the Lawson bloodline, as he had 4 children before he was killed in a car crash at the age of 32. Now, I can see him probably being a little reckless. After all the shit that he had been through, he was probably not the most careful guy in the world. I can totally forgive him that. Now, what became of the farm after all this madness went down? Charlie's brother Marion opened it up as a tourist attraction. I mean, you got a tragedy, you might as well profit from it. With all the original blood puddles left intact. It attracted enough morbidly curious people to keep the thing running for about 5 years. I call them morbidly curious, you can call them psychos, whatever. Morbidly curious. The raisin cake from the kitchen was put in a glass container because people kept picking the raisins off of it. And this cake was eventually sold to a carnival sideshow after the attraction closed down. Eventually, the cake made its way back into the possession of a family member. They came to their senses, and they buried it and kind of put an end to the whole legend. And so ends the story of the Lawson family murders. What a tragedy. A whole family wiped out in an afternoon on the most wonderful day of the year. Merry fucking Christmas. I hope your Christmas or your holidays or whatever you're celebrating is way better than what these poor people had to go through. If you've made it this far, let's listen to some listener questions, shall we? Spamuel Schlumberger asks, why does your voice sound like that? Well, I'm from Atlantic Canada, and that's kind of how I sound. We're not known particularly for our sexy accents. My voice has been described as kind of like a mix between Marge Simpson and whale mating calls. So, yeah, it's not particularly attractive. Moving on. Genevieve Grunkelstein asks, why is your voice so annoying? Okay, for fuck's sakes. Alright, that'll about do it for the listener questions this evening. This has been a nice, light Christmas conversation here on Evil Done Badly, the worst true crime podcast on the internet. I am your host, Dick, and thank you for listening. I can be reached on Instagram at EvilDoneBadly or by email at evildonebadly@gmail.com if you would like to suggest topics for future episodes. You can send me insults or death threats through these means as well. I appreciate any kind of feedback. I hope you enjoyed this discussion of the Lawson family murders from 1929, and I will see you next time.
1, Merry Christmas, motherfucker. Santa Claus can go to hell. Merry Christmas, motherfucker. I kicked him in the bells. Merry Christmas, motherfucker. I ain't buying you shit. Merry Christmas, motherfucker. I stole your fucking gifts. Merry Christmas, motherfucker. Merry Christmas, motherfucker. Merry Christmas, motherfucker. I hit you till you bleed. Merry Christmas, motherfucker. I crapped under your tree. Merry Christmas, motherfucker. Stuff a fruitcake up your hole. Merry Christmas, motherfucker. Gonna die in the snow. Merry Christmas, motherfucker. Merry Christmas, motherfucker.